Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. If you're following the tariff puck, you'd be forgiven for feeling a little bit dizzy. Late this afternoon, U.S. President Donald Trump agreed to delay his 25% tariffs on some Canadian goods until April 2nd. He also announced a similar pause on tariffs affecting many imports from Mexico. It covers goods that fall under the existing North American trade deal. Trump again defended his tariff plan.
Companies and countries that have ripped off this country, our beloved USA, and they're not going to be ripping us off anymore.
The White House will still impose a 10% levy on potash that U.S. farmers import from Canada. It's another change in the punishing tariffs Trump announced Tuesday after previously delaying them by a month. His actions have caused financial markets to sink and have spread fears of the economic fallout from a trade war. But the situation is also bolstering patriotism. Grocery stores have jumped on this to try and endorse that national pride with Buy Canadian labels. But as CBC's Dalton Chen explains, it's not a perfect system.
Has the trade war inspired you to buy Canadian at the supermarket? Doing so might not be as simple as you think. Jim Kresge found that out this week at the Freshco location near his Windsor home. He noticed maple leaf symbols on multiple shelves stocked with American-made products, such as Campbell's soup and Betty Crocker baking ingredients.
I got to the soup aisle and I happened to pick up a can of soup, and I saw that even though they had red maple leaves on everything, the product was actually made in USA. That was stated right on the can. To me, it's not right. It's deceptive.
Freshco has been incorporating Buy Canadian rhetoric into its advertising. The chain is reminding the public it's a Canadian company, with apps and flyers telling customers to look for maple leaves in store. A spokesperson for Freshco's parent company, Sobeys, told CBC Windsor that items are reviewed to meet Food Inspection Agency definitions for Canadian products, but occasional labeling discrepancies can happen. University of Guelph food economics expert Michael von Massow says determining what is a Canadian product can be complicated.
We don't grow oranges on the banks of the Great Lakes, but we do have companies in Canada that take concentrated frozen orange juice, add water to it, and put it on store shelves. Is that a Canadian product or not? So there's these nuances. It's sometimes difficult to define what Canadian is. Each of us have to sort of create our own line as to what is acceptable.
Jim Kresge's wife Carol says she's turned to a Facebook group for advice on making Canada-conscious buying decisions.
I sort of fell into the rabbit hole of reading all the comments on there, and I shared, at the time there was 74,000 members on this page, and I forwarded it to all my friends and family who joined in, and as of today it's at 1.2 million people that are following this page of alternatives to U.S. products.
Meanwhile, Jim Kresge says he's not giving up. He will continue to make pro-Canada consumer choices as much as possible.
One person may not make a difference on the buying Canadian, but if 50% do it, it could make a huge difference.
Dalton Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Construction sites like this one across the region are caught in the crossfire of the U.S.-Canada trade war.
I think on the short term, it's going to delay a lot of projects. If this does carry on for the long term, I think, the impacts are going to be on the cost of materials.
Crucial materials like lumber are about to get much more expensive. From shingles to windows, developers tend to source many materials from the United States. Now, with retaliatory tariffs also at play, prices will go up. Not to mention, with the U.S. president's promise to additionally slap on steel and aluminum tariffs next week, industry insiders say cost of U.S. steel has already risen. The general consensus is production is going to slow down and the cost of new builds is going to go up. This throws a wrench in promises from all levels of government to build more homes in the middle of a housing shortage and affordability crisis.
It is exactly the last thing we need in a housing crisis. So hopefully there's some relief coming, but at the current stage of the game, it's definitely not welcome news in our industry. I think it just puts a lot of people in the waiting game. And when we're already down 16% across Ontario for home build starts in 2024, that's not helping our situation at all.
And it won't just impact housing. Rocco Tullio owns Rock Developments and develops land across the province for major national tenants. He explains there's a trickle-down effect.
So, for instance, if I build a grocery store, well, now my cost of my building that grocery store is significantly higher. I pass that on to the end user, which would be, let's say, Sobeys. Well, the cost of bread, the cost of food is going to go up so that it covers and maintains its level of profit. And guess what happens? So the consumer pays that. Well, now the consumer can't afford to live and pay for these things.
He agrees that there will be a major slowdown in production, given that people are spooked, as everyone waits to see what the true ramifications of these costs and tariffs will be.
Colette Kennedy is with us now. Colette, how is it looking into this evening?
Well, it's one of those situations, those braces that, we have to wear in the unfortunate circumstance where you have kind of whiplash.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's not that that's funny. But we need one of those for weather. That's what I'm getting to. I almost feel that way. When we look at where that cold air is to the north and how that's trying to sink south, we're just sort of pushing back. Just a big departure from where temperatures were even 24 hours ago. But 2 degrees right now in Windsor is what we're looking at. And we're still dealing with, in the province anyway, some winter weather travel advisories and blowing snow because those winds have been so strong. But we'll just have partly cloudy skies overnight tonight, -3. It will feel like -9, 5 degrees tomorrow. There will be sun to start, but then a chance for some wet flurries. I'll get into that when I come back.
Okay, thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
Now, even with that 1-month tariff pause on some products, Premier Doug Ford says Ontario is forging ahead with its retaliatory measures, slapping an extra 25% charge on electricity to the U.S. as of Monday. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has more.
Mayor Ford, thanks so much for joining us.
Premier Doug Ford was once again on a U.S. TV network Thursday morning, telling CNN that starting Monday, electricity the province sends to 3 U.S. states will cost 25% more.
Honestly, it really bothers me. We have to do this. I don't want to do this. I want to send more electricity.
It'll mean a big price hike for the 1.5 million U.S. customers Ontario supplies with electricity. Homes and businesses in the northern states of Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. Ford believes he can make the change without having to recall the legislature. He later told reporters that even if Donald Trump were to put a 1-month pause on tariffs to Canada, the increase would remain in place.
He did this before. Remember, he said he'd do it 1 month, 3 days later, a week later, he puts the tariffs on. So as I always say, you touch a stove once and you get burnt. You don't touch that stove again. The only deal is drop the tariffs unconditionally.
And later, Trump did add that 1-month pause on products covered by the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, signed during his first presidency, meaning Ontario electricity could go way up in price for Americans in days. One academic applauds the idea, but isn't sure it'll work.
Unfortunately, Ontario doesn't have leverage in this space. For the most part, Ontario exports to the United States because it has to. That we are in situations where generation exceeds domestic demand.
Ford's office promises more details on Monday on the extra charge to U.S. customers. Later in the day, Ford was back on another U.S. network, Fox.
Isn't this a shame? It's an absolute mess.
During the interview, the host played an old clip from President Trump after he signed the trade deal with Canada and Mexico.
The USMCA is the largest, fairest, most balanced and modern trade agreement ever achieved.
Ford then repeated his harsh words for Trump to a U.S. audience, saying he believes the tariffs are not about fentanyl or illegal border crossings.
Don't use this as an excuse, because that's all it is an absolute excuse. He wants to declare an economic war on his closest friends, his closest allies in the entire world.
Ford's office says there will be no change to any retaliatory measures Ontario has added until the tariff threat is gone, meaning U.S. alcohol will stay off LCBO shelves. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
In non-tariff news, measles cases are top of mind for many people right now, with about 200 cases confirmed in Ontario. And it's especially worrying for parents of young kids. We spoke to the mom of an immunocompromised little girl named Willow to ask how her family is being affected.
I'm Adriana Eunice. This is Willow Desjardins. She was diagnosed with cancer at 10 months old, stage 4 neuroblastoma. And because of cancer, we had to postpone all of her vaccines. And she's also pretty immunocompromised. So all those serious illnesses like the measles, would actually probably end up killing my daughter. And I also noticed more in moms groups, people saying how to get out of vaccines and why they're not vaccinating their kids and all these things that I've looked up over and over again. Because, when someone says something enough times, you're like, I don't know, maybe, is it true? And then you look it up and you're like, oh, no, it's not. So, I don't know where this information is really coming from. And in the end, it just makes it scary for people like my daughter who cannot afford, they don't have the immune system to fight it off. And she wasn't lucky enough to have been vaccinated just because she was too little. And now she's too immunocompromised to get these shots.
The Windsor Essex Health Unit has confirmed one case of measles in our region, reported at a school in Ruthven. According to the Government of Canada, the measles vaccine is 85 to 95% effective with one dose and nearly 100% effective with the second. We spoke to a retired immunization nurse. She says vaccine exemptions may be the reason that we're seeing more cases of measles.
I'm a retired nurse in public health. I do have one son, he's 15. We need everybody to be vaccinated. And when you do have a large amount of people, and there are, I don't know the number, but I am going to say with confidence, there is a large amount of people that are getting vaccine exemptions. And it is very weighing and taxing morally as somebody who, with every fiber of their being, believes in vaccination. We know that this vaccine is so effective. I just don't understand. It's very frustrating, but we do need more people on board instead of the other way with the exemptions.
According to numbers from the local health unit, 85% of 7-year-old elementary school students are fully vaccinated against measles. That's the age when students would have been able to get both doses of the vaccine. So that's 10% less than the 95% needed for herd immunity. In other local news now, Rocket Mortgage is pulling out of Windsor. The U.S.-based mortgage company says it is shifting focus to the American market and that it's begun the process of winding down its business to close by June 27th. Though the Innovation Studio, which works to support businesses, will stay. Windsor's downtown councillor says he will focus on helping anyone who loses their job during this transition and insists it's not all bad news.
But the Rocket Innovation Studio in downtown Windsor isn't going anywhere. My thoughts are with the employees from the Rocket Mortgage side of things that are being displaced, and certainly want to see those people get jobs right away. But mostly it's just getting rid of the myth where people think that Rocket is leaving downtown, and it's certainly not.
Rocket Mortgage opened to a lot of fanfare when it set up here in 2019. While it is shutting its operations across Canada, Rocket will keep a small footprint in Windsor and Vancouver. Now, if you listened closely today, you may have heard thousands of students crunching apples all at the same time. CBC's Michael Evans stopped by a local school to learn all about the initiative and how the goal is to bring awareness to school food programs across the country.
Today was a great big crunch, and it's a national initiative coordinated through the Coalition for Healthy School Food. And all kids across Canada are crunching simultaneously on an apple today. It's a gesture to help bring some awareness and highlight school food programs. It's an annual event. Schools can participate throughout Windsor and Essex County. There is a virtual program that happens today where schools from across Canada can log on and do this all together. It's an event that most of the kids really look forward to. Windsor Express were here, and some other dignitaries came and helped us count down to the crunch.
Is it true what they say about apples and keeping doctors away?
Well, we certainly hope that a diet that is high in fruits and vegetables will help contribute to that.
A live look outside there. The sun is setting. Love that the time is changing. We're getting more light this time of the evening. Now, Colette will be back later in the program to talk us through the warm-up that is coming in the days ahead as well. She mentioned that whiplash, but first, after the break, my chat with the head of Michigan's Auto Association. Stay with us. Welcome back. Automakers in Michigan are also feeling the sting of this trade war as a result of all the instability given how interconnected the industry is with Canada. I spoke with the head of Mich Auto, the state's Automotive, Mobility and Technology Association. The group has been advocating to federal legislators to push back against tariffs.
Hi, my name is Glenn Stevens, Jr. I'm the executive director of Mich Auto at the Detroit Regional Chamber.
So Glenn, 30-day reprieve first on auto tariffs, and now we're getting a 30-day reprieve on most Canadian goods for 30 days. But what do you make of this whole roller coaster that we're on?
That's a good word for it. We still have a high level of uncertainty. We've had that for a couple of weeks now, and this just means we're going to prolong that uncertainty. Hopefully, we will drive towards an elimination of all of them. That would be ideal, but at a very minimum, that we get to reopening and negotiating through the USMCA process.
Yeah, what is the mood in Michigan around all this? We know here in Windsor, there's talk of how catastrophic this is for this community, to the auto industry specifically. What is the mood in Michigan?
Well, I think if you look at the industry, which is our largest industry, it's a $348 billion economic contribution, and 1.2 million people are directly or indirectly employed. When you look at the industry, it's a bit frustrated. It's a tough enough business as it is to be competitive, and this has kind of taken everybody's eye off the day-to-day ball. And so it wasn't something we were expected. So there's the business side. On the personal and neighbor side, because we are literally neighbors, we have lots of Canadian friends and neighbors and people that we work with that come across the border and vice versa. And so there's that part of it where we know that we won't see them as much. We won't maybe see them in our bars and restaurants, and maybe not even in tourism in the summer. And that's a big part of our relationship with Ontario. So there's a disappointment in that also.
Some of what we've heard from President Donald Trump is this idea of bringing production back to the United States. He said, Canada stole the auto industry. He wants to see cars built in Detroit instead, more cars built in Detroit than already. How realistic is that? And do people in Michigan want that?
Well, I certainly don't agree that Canada stole the auto industry. I mean, we've been doing this together for over 100 years. The first assembly plants in Canada and in the U.S. were the early 1900s. They weren't too far off starting at the same time. So we've been developing this supply chain and this relationship over a long period of time. It's interconnected. It's symbiotic. We do business together. We look at it seamlessly. So undoing that is not something that we desire. And you look at the Canadian auto industry, at its peak, it produced 3 million vehicles, and I think it's about 1.3. I mean, the Canadian auto industry has declined significantly, and credit to where it is today. So we don't look at them as Michigan jobs in Canada.
What is your organization doing to send that message to Donald Trump?
So our primary goal is to communicate with our federal legislators. We have 13 U.S. Congress people, 7 Republican, 6 Democrat, 2 U.S. senators who are both Democratic. So we do communicate with them regularly. But we've communicated directly with people in the administration. Unfortunately, in their defense also, this is a brand new administration. There are a lot of trade offices. USTR is not even confirmed yet. So it makes it a little bit difficult to communicate. But the lines are opening, and they're opening more and more. So that's a good thing.
What do you think it'll take to see a reversal here?
I don't know the answer to that. It's fluid. It's dynamic. We use all those words. All we can do is keep communicating how interconnected and how long it takes to make these changes. Of course, we want more manufacturing jobs in Michigan, but we don't want them at the expense of Ontario. So we want to be able to compete as a region and as a North American region globally, because we have some global forces like the growing Chinese automotive industry that we're going to have to deal with. And so we look at it and really in the long view. So I'm hoping again that they pull up the USMCA, that we get those negotiations reopened and address what needs to be addressed that way and maintain our free trade between our 3 countries.
If you have a story that you want us to cover, please write to us. Text us at 519-984-2051 or email us at windsor@cbc.ca. We'll be right back. Colette Kennedy is back with us now for more weather. And Colette, it is definitely chilly today, but we know that that's going to change with temperatures going up to 17 degrees in a few days. It's wild.
Yes, I mean, incredible, right? We're into that time of the year where winter kind of wants to keep pulling us back and spring wants to get here. And so I do have that to share with you when we get to that 5-day forecast. So stick around just for a few minutes here, but let's talk about what's happening in the short term. So that current temperature 1 degree freezing for Sarnia and Chatham-Kent as well. Those winds, the sustained winds aren't quite as strong now, but we are still looking at some of those gusts, certainly near 40 kilometers an hour and even stronger closer to where that other system is departing, so over to the east of us. We are still going to have some winds at times strong as we go through the evening, and then they kind of back off as we get into Friday evening. But we do have another system that's actually going to be moving close by, not necessarily in. And let me show you what I mean by that. I will just point out for anyone doing any traveling, winter weather travel advisories not that far away, and the blowing snow advisories there too, where some lake effects still occurring because there is still open water there on Lake Huron. So the exiting system to the east of us, the next almost incoming system to the west of us. And so when we put this forward and I show you how the model brings this through, you understand why I'm saying it's kind of trying to make its way in, but it's not going to have that much success, and we get this sort of glancing blow. So probably some variable skies to start the day off, and there'll be some sun in there, but then increasing cloudiness. By afternoon, we're likely to see a bit of a mix, some wet flurries or perhaps mixing with some rain showers as that temperature kind of hovers just above freezing, but then see how it kind of peels off to the east as opposed to pushing more northward. So we may get a few millimeters of rain showers out of it, but because it's a mix, perhaps a trace to a centimeter or so of some very, very, mushy snow that is going to be basically disappearing on us as it comes through and just kind of melting on contact there. So that's Friday. I know this looks very ominous, but just to let you know that there will be at times some, the roads a little bit tricky. There's that 5 degrees for tomorrow. That's why it should mostly melt or be rain showers. A reminder about the clocks, Saturday night going forward. Look at the sunshine, though, and the dry conditions. We get a stretch of that. And, of course, the teens showing up there. Not negative teens, positive teens. Yeah, Monday and Tuesday.
Yes, it'll really feel like springtime. Thank you so much, Colette. Thanks to you all for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Good night.